Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kevin Galetz, and I'm an industry education coordinator working with the Regina District Industry Education Council and SunWest School Division. Today it's my pleasure to introduce Greg Bennett, who is a primary physical education teacher currently teaching in Saskatoon at Willow Grove School. Greg is a graduate of the University of Saskatchewan and Rosetown Central High School. He will talk to us about his occupation and the career path and training he has taken to get here. Just a reminder before we begin, this session is being recorded and will appear on the RDIEC YouTube channel for you or others to view in the future. We'd also like to request that any students who watch this session go to our website at www.rdiec.ca and complete the student survey that can be found near the top of the website homepage. Completion of the survey gets your name in a monthly draw for a $50 gift card. Again, the website is www.rdiec.ca. If you have any questions for our presenters throughout or after the session, please type them in the chat box. Once again, welcome, Greg. I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thanks so much, Kevin. And thank you for anybody who's tuning in or watching this in the future. I appreciate you taking the time. I'm Greg Bennett, like Kevin said, and I teach elementary physical education in the Saskatoon Public School Division. I'm super excited to share with you what it's like to be an elementary teacher. So let's jump right into it. A few things that I do as, or what my role is as a phys ed teacher. So the biggest piece is the instruction and assessment of students using the concepts of active living, skillful movement, and relationships. So we have the Saskatchewan curriculum, and each grade has a different curriculum. There's usually roughly 10 to 12 outcomes that we have to cover, and each outcome has several different indicators that we can use to assess it. So those active living, skillful movements, and relationships, those are the three overarching themes of our curriculum. So if we were to break that down, active living looks at the effects of physical education or activity on our bodies, how we can be active inside and outside of school, some of the other benefits of being active, and how physical activity helps us to be good citizens and helps us be involved in our community. When we look at skillful movement, we're talking about specific skills such as locomotor movements like running, jumping, skipping, galloping, anything that would be known as a basic motor pattern. We also do sport-specific skills, so volleying, throwing, catching, kicking. I don't use specific sports in my teaching, but I use games that employ those skills so that kids can enjoy the activities maybe later on in life. And then when we look at relationships, we're talking about interpersonal skills between kids, how they interact with each other, how they interact with adults around them. So things like sharing, sportsmanship, being a good winner and loser, as well as being just willing to engage in the activities that we do. So I use those three key points to assess. And another role that we have is differentiation of instruction and activities. So when we talk about differentiation, that just means how we can change things up to make everything make sense for everybody. So we try and give students explanations and activities, but not everybody learns the same. So we need to adjust how we present something so that everybody can manage it. In my school, we have a high percentage of students who come to us from other countries, so English isn't their first language. I need to make sure that my instruction is clear enough that they can understand and feel included as well, even though they might not be able to grasp our language quite yet. So a few examples of differentiation of instruction would include using demonstrations. So I would show the skill, or maybe if I'm not as skilled in something, I can show them a video, or I can use a poster to show them how it works. We can use verbal cues, so I can give them very quick little things. So if I'm teaching an overhand throw, I always say scarecrow, step, follow through. 4 words, but covers a whole complex chain of skill movement, but we can keep them focused on it and it helps them move through it. As well, we work at changing wordings to make things a little more digestible. So like I said, with EAL students, we have to make sure that We don't really use colloquialisms. I know I'm really bad for saying something that doesn't quite make sense to a non-English speaker, so I always have to be mindful of how I speak to my students so that they understand things and don't interpret it in a way that doesn't make sense to them. I do a lot of collaboration with staff. So that would be when we build our gym schedule, we try and keep classroom teachers, their preps at the same time so they can work with each other. I collaborate with my co-teacher, so we plan out lessons together. We make sure that we know who's doing what in the gym that day, who needs what equipment. I've been learning a lot from her. She's been a teacher in the city for 20 years, and it's just been great to get some of that knowledge from her. And we also work with classroom teachers to find out some effective strategies to work with students who we may have difficulty with. And I realized I did skip one quick thing about differentiation of activities. I'm going to hop back to that. So not everybody is the same physical ability. So just like they're different learners, they're different movers as well. So we can change activities to make things a little bit easier. So whether that's changing the size of a ball that we're using, or we change a rule in a game to make it easier for them, we just try to encourage them to be active in their own way, and they can achieve their successes however they may be able to. So not everybody, well, everybody does the same activity, but maybe everybody just takes a little bit of a different path to get there. One of the other major things I do is assisting the kindergarten teachers with gross motor movement tests. So we use EYE tests to see where their cognition is, so just their thinking processes, as well as how their body moves. So we look at balance, we look at their ability to kick a ball, to throw a ball, to move skillfully through an area. So when we look at these gross motor patterns, we can see if there are any delays in their cognition, and it helps us to assess where they're at and what we can do to help them improve. And then there's also extracurricular activities. Currently, I'm coaching some girls volleyball. It looks very different in a pandemic setting, but it's just nice to be able to get the kids active in a way that's not in the gym, or in class in the gym, but something that they can enjoy on their own time and hopefully can play later on in club, or play beach volleyball as adults, or join leagues like that. My toolbox of skills and traits. I picked, there's a lot that goes into teaching, but I picked some of the most important that I feel work the best. So in terms of skills, lots of communication. You're communicating with parents about their students' performance, or about their children's performance. You communicate with other staff members if they are going to be away and you need to adjust your programming, or talking to them about their students and what you've been seeing in the gym, because sometimes people behave a little bit differently in the gym than they do in a classroom. Communicating with administration, like your principal and vice principal. You'll be doing some assessments during the year, so you want to make sure that they're in the loop as well. Ultimately, you just have to be a very good communicator, clearly saying what you need to say while doing it in a professional and caring way. Lots of planning and organizing. So there's planning of lesson plans, unit plans / year plans. We organize our equipment, we organize our kids in the gym in terms of how they sit, how they are ready to learn. Sometimes kids aren't always the best knowers of where they should be and who is helpful to them, so they can be pretty chatty. We have to organize them in a way that they can sit and listen and ensure that everybody understands what's happening. And that also folds into management of students and time. So when we talk about classroom management, we look at situating them in ways where they can listen well. We have to manage our time in there. So we get 50-minute blocks. I try and get them a little bit of a warm-up tag game for fun. Then I have to make sure that my instructions are what they're learning is quick, but also effective, so that they can be active most of the time. We try to encourage them to be as active as possible. So it's really important on my end that I am clear and concise in what I'm teaching, and that I know how much time I have and how much time I can give them to work on their skills. Lots of conflict resolution in elementary. Little people are still learning how to interact with each other. So there's lots of tattling, there's lots of arguments, troubles with sharing. So we have to try to guide them into finding the right way to work with each other. So lots of people or lots of kids will come up and say, this happened, so-and-so did this. And my first question is, did you talk to them and tell them how you feel about it? Well, no. Okay, well, go back and try again. So I try and steer them into a direction where they can take it into their hands, but then if they really do struggle, they can come and see me and get that support after. Lots of problem solving. So if I've had a few days where I go in with a plan and I have equipment that I need and it's suddenly gone because somebody else has taken it. I need to figure out how to use that lesson or use equipment differently to teach that lesson. And also just working through some of the daily challenges of things that happen with our kids. Creativity. So depending on where you are, you may not have a ton of equipment or a ton of space. So you have to find creative ways to employ your lessons and to get the kids active and have an enjoyable experience. And the big one that's maybe the last 5 to 10 years of an education is technology use. There is so much technology in our schools now. So using iPads, online assessment tools and rubrics. We do all of our attendance and grade books through an online website. So it's really important to know some of those things. And one of the biggest ones too is using Microsoft Office, Word, or Microsoft Office like Word, Excel, all of those programs. They are crucial in helping you plan, helping you build resources and things like that. And even just printers and scanners and computers. I remember in my internship at a high school, I went to go photocopy something, didn't quite know what to do, ended up running off 60 copies of something. So I had to kind of hide it in the recycling bin because it wasn't even printed correctly. So there are some things that we take for granted, but it's just really important to work or learn from them. And a few traits that I think are really important for teachers. Having compassion. Kids are going to come in every day with different mindsets. Anything can happen between end of day on Monday to the next time you see them on Tuesday. So we have to be able to understand that the little people have problems. They're not like big people problems, but we need to know how to come at them in a way that helps them feel understood and help them to feel listened to and feel belonging in our class. You got to be patient. The little people, they love to tell stories, and they're so funny, but sometimes they can take a long time to say what they want to say. They get excited or they have trouble communicating. So you have to be patient when you're listening to them, and you have to be patient quite often. Humor is a really good trait to have. I was teaching a lesson a few weeks ago and I mentioned the word but. Everyone lost it. This is a grade 2 class, keep in mind. So you can't be offended when they laugh at words that you take for granted, common words, but you gotta be able to come at things with a good sense of humor. And kids always like it if you can laugh and joke with them a little bit and make things a little more enjoyable. Adaptability. You've got to be flexible, especially in the pandemic where we had to go outside quite a bit, wearing masks where you're constantly active and being sweaty. If you have a day where you're kicked out of your gym for pictures, that kind of thing, you have to be ready to adapt and adjust your program as you need. You got to be open-minded. If you come in with a closed mind, you're not going to learn much. You're not going to be able to process a few things. You want to make sure that you come in ready to learn and listen from anyone around you and to learn from your own experiences. So, and that leads into being reflective. Often at the end of my day, I'll try and figure out if a lesson went well, what did I do that was successful, or if I totally bombed a lesson, or I think it just blew up on me, I need to look at what happened. So what can I do to improve it for next time? And you got to be receptive to feedback, because you're going to learn a lot. I've only been in this business for 5 years and I'm learning a ton, I feel like, all the time. You're going to get lots of feedback from other teachers. You're going to get feedback from your administration based on how you perform in the classroom. So you have to be able to take feedback and use it constructively and feel okay with it. And you have to be resilient. You're going to fail. It's going to happen. You got to learn to take it on the chin a bit and turn it into a good learning experience rather than dwelling on it and being upset. So those are some of the major things that I've learned in my time so far for skills and trades. So where I work, I'm in Willow Grove School in Saskatoon Public School Division. Our division has 49 elementary schools and 10 high schools. And I teach in either of the 2 gyms that my school has. And we often have 2 classes in 1 gym due to the size of our school. We have a student body of roughly 700 people. So quite often there is gym sharing going on. And we utilize our outdoor spaces quite a bit, which include a playground, a large tarmac, a field, and an outdoor rink. So we'll give you a few pictures here. So this is our main gym. It has a rock wall on the left-hand side there. At the very back is our equipment room that I'll show you in a second. And we also have storage at the far right-hand side for cheese mats and big blue mats that we can use for games. And there's also another storage room underneath the Wolf logo there. So we have tons of space. We'll take a look at our small gym. This is primarily where I teach out of. Again, we've got another rock wall at the back. We've got music players that we can use. It's a very large space. We are quite privileged to have as much room as we do. Not all schools look like this in our division. Our outdoor space, I actually took this one this morning. It was a beautiful day. So you can see our large tarmac. We've got 4 square boxes. There's hopscotch on the ground. There's tetherball posts. We've got our big playground structures in kind of the middle. On the left side, you can see there's a massive field that we can play with. And in the right side, just tucked behind the school, there's an outdoor rink that the kids can use at any time. And when it becomes winter, it gets frozen over by our community council who look after it. And we can also take our kids there too if we want. So in terms of equipment of what I use, this is a panorama of my equipment room. I've got pretty much anything in there that you can think of and multiple class sets of things. So there's spike ball nets, we've got pool noodles, basketballs, volleyballs, bean bags, hula hoops, bowling pins, speed stacking cups, and things that I didn't even know existed, like fling it nets. It leads to a really robust program, and we can be really creative in how we deliver our program. So the best parts of my job, this one was pretty easy to do. I had a few pieces of content that I struggled with finding here and there, but this was hands down my favorite one to do. Every day that I do has a routine, but there's always a new adventure. So I usually see 10 classes a week on average, and I see around 226 kids. So there's a lot of moving parts in there, but I always know that I have my prep period in period 1, and then I'll see the kids from periods 2 through 6. I always see my kindergarten classes in the afternoon in period 5. And it's just nice to have that structure, but I always know it's going to be a little bit different every day because of how the kids are feeling, what they're learning, and I always find out something new about them. Seeing the students grow and develop in their journey of physical literacy is something that I think is super cool. When I talk about physical literacy, I'm talking about their ability to perform skillful movements and understand when and how to use these skills, and to just be able to engage in good physical activity. It's incredible to see them not be able to catch something and then be able to catch no problem, or to see how they've changed their movement patterns to be more effective in throwing or kicking or anything like that. And or even just to see that light bulb moment of, oh, that's how you do it, or now understand why we do this, or learning or seeing the similarities between different activities. It's just so much fun to see. You get to build relationships with a ton of kids. So like I said, I see over 200 kids. They're all quirky, they're all unique, and I get to see them all. So this breaks down into a third of my school's student body. So there's around 700 kids. I see 30% of them. And they always bring something new to us. So it's so nice to build that relationship. You're always learning. I've just found so much new information and ways to teach, activities to use. It keeps you fresh so you don't get stuck in a rut. It's really easy to get into a rut if you find something that works and you just use it over and over. But if you're not learning, you're not growing. And if you're growing, you're able to become a better teacher and ultimately give a better program to your kids. Consistent hours. I know I work Monday through Friday. The start of my day is 8:40 for the first period. So I'm usually here 25, 30 minutes earlier, just to settle in, get going before the day. And then my day is done at 3:05. I hang out afterwards for a little bit, and then I'm home by 4 o'clock to walk my dog usually. And job security. I just got my permanent contract a couple of years ago. And that means that for as long as I choose to work in Saskatoon Public School Divisions, I will have a job. Unless I decide to go somewhere else, then I'm out of luck. So some of the current challenges that I face. Phys ed isn't always taken seriously by the students or even other teachers. Sometimes when you go into a school where a previous Phys ed teacher has played a lot of games and doesn't do a lot of instruction or look at the curriculum as much as you might do, the kids have a different approach to it. So my partner actually is a Phys ed teacher, and she's been struggling with that because her kids they played dodgeball all the time and didn't do any other sports. So she's trying to teach them things, but the kids just aren't receptive to it. And sometimes even the teachers knowingly or unknowingly take away the value of it because they'll hold kids back to do other things like math or science, things that they feel are more important. And sometimes it's even just from their own experience in Phys ed. They know, oh yeah, it's just silly stuff. They don't do anything too seriously, but sometimes they forget about our planning and organizing and management that we do. Working with challenging students is a tough one. If you have a few kids who have maybe some behavioral challenges, you spend a lot of time dealing with them instead of being able to instruct your kids, give them feedback on how they're doing, or even just managing activities that they're doing. So challenging students can eat up a good chunk of your time. So that's also where that time management piece comes in. And it's always just learning how to work with those students and try to encourage them to work within your expectations. There's a large amount of assessment in a short amount of time. So unlike homeroom teachers, we only see our kids for 150 minutes a week. So that ends up being 3 classes a week. That's not a lot of time to get to everybody, especially when you have that many kids that you see on a regular basis. Some of the previous challenges of my job. So I wasn't always a Phys ed teacher. I didn't walk into a Phys ed role. The first one is job uncertainty. When you start off, you begin subbing, and then you can get a hold of a temporary contract, meaning that you're not guaranteed to get it renewed at the end of the year. So you got to make sure that you are taking the work when you can get it. I know a few people who have said, oh, I'll only sub in high school, or I'll only sub in this subject area. You don't want to lock yourself off, because then you lose the chance of getting valuable experience and also just making money. So you don't want to take the money out of your hand or the experience out of your brain. You want to make sure that you're taking jobs when you can get them. You get some tough teaching assignments though in those first few years. I wrote down a list because I had to remember all of the things that I taught at one time. 2 years ago, I was at 2 different schools. I was at one school in the morning where I did grade 8 math, grade 5, 6 health and art, grade 3 English and Phys ed. And then in the afternoons, I would do social studies 5, grade 6 through 8 health, grade 6 career guidance, dance and drama grade 2. And I worked with a little bit of the functional life skills program as well. So it was really a struggle to cover everything effectively. You are building relationships with several kids. You've got to keep track of all your assessments. You're learning the curriculums for those subjects that you're teaching. It can be pretty overwhelming. So it's definitely difficult to find that work-life balance in the early part of your career. You always feel like you have to do something. You always feel like you're assessing, like you could go to work an hour early, leave an hour late, and still go home and feel like you have to work. And I did that for a little bit too. So my work-life balance suffered a lot. I wasn't eating well. I wasn't exercising enough. And ironically enough, when you put that much work into teaching and not into your living on the outside, you become a worse teacher because then you're tired, you don't feel great. So you have to find that work-life balance. And then there's the pressures of your assessment for teaching. In your first couple of years, you'll have to do an AFT, which is when your principal or vice principal who will come and watch you teach. They give you feedback, they highlight your strong suits, they highlight things you need to work on. Good AFTs get you in the running earlier for permanent contracts, which is ultimately what people are looking for. You want to be able to know that come summertime, you have a job when you come back in the fall. So the better you do on your AFT, the better chance you have of nailing that job down later. So there's a lot of pressure riding on that one for sure. Salary and benefits. So the STF salary grid, I'll see if I can pull it up here. This one is tricky to explain without showing it. So if you look at the class 4, 5, and 6, that's where you would be if you have a kin and ed degree. So I'm a class 5 since I have 2 degrees. And the first year you start out, you make just shy of $59,000. But as you gain experience on the grid, you end up capping out at your 11th year and ended up somewhere within the $90,000 range. My partner, for example, she's a class 6 because she has her master's degree. So she would start on this edge of the scale. And then it also increases depending on contracts negotiated between the Teachers Federation and the Government of Saskatchewan. So this one was for 2020. We go down to 2021 and it bumps up a bit. And then 2022, it'll bump up a little bit more. And I can show you this because this is all listed publicly since we are government workers. This can be found by anybody. So I'm actually going through the STF website to show you that teacher's salary. Get rid of that. We've got a really strong health and dental plan. It's pretty awesome. You pay into it a small amount per month off of your paycheck, and you get full prescription medication covered. You also have hospital stays and ambulance rides covered if you ever end up in those situations. You get 80% coverage for visits to massage therapists, chiropractors, physiotherapists. There's also coverage money allotted for vision. So if you need contacts or glasses or just eye appointments, that's all covered as well. And the dental plan is also quite good. It covers cleaning, repairs, orthodontics, so braces. And when you're older and you have kids, the kids can use, or you can use your benefits for your kids, which can help save you a lot of money as well. We also pay into a pension through Saskatchewan Teachers Retirement Plan. I am very far away from that as of now. So they sometimes send you how much money you have in your pension. And at this point, I think I would receive $2 a month after I retire. So it's always kind of funny to see that. But yeah, it's guaranteed money at the end of your career that you can get when you're 65. So it's nice to have that. Benefits, you get long weekends, you get Christmas break, you get February break, Easter break, and summers you get off. I say that with a quotation because we don't get paid in the summer in my division. So I receive my payment for 10 months of the year. And then my next paycheck comes September 30th. So it's 3 months of time until your next paycheck from June. You got to make sure that you're saving or you have a summer job lined up if you feel like you're not able to save. And then a typical day, depending on where you are in Saskatchewan, really, if you can start at 8:15 or 8:40, somewhere in between there, and it might end between 3:05 and 3:50. So my day starts at 8:40 here and ends at 3:05. but I've subbed at schools where they end at 350, 325, and anywhere else in between. So looking at education requirements, if you're going to take the kinesiology education combined program at the U of S, grade 12 classes you need are bio 30, chem or physics 30, and foundations of math 30 or pre-calc 30. Personally, I recommend taking physics because you'll have to take a biomechanics course in your second year of university. And in your first year of university, you're going to have to take a calculus class. I did not take calculus in grade 12. I took foods instead. I really enjoyed foods, but when I got to calculus in high school, I had no idea, or college, sorry, I had no idea what I was doing. So it's really good to get that strong or higher level math down before you go. I ended up dropping out of the class and didn't drop out in time to get my money back. So I ended up having to pay for the class twice. That's not very fun to do. According to the website, currently you'll need an 85% or higher to be admitted into the program with your grade 12 marks. And they figure out that percentage based on a 5-mark formula. So they take the top 5 marks of your 30 level classes. And that looks like 1 English, so A30, B30, or ELA, A30 or B30. You have 1 math, so like I said, highly recommend calculus. So you can use foundations, pre-calc, or calc 30 with the new math curriculum. And I believe with the old one, you can have an A, B, or C 30. So when I got admitted in 2010, I could use my math C30. And then 3 other approved subjects. So 2 natural sciences, 2 social sciences or humanities, and 1 fine or performing art. There's an extensive list that can be found on the U of S Kinesiology and Education website. I was hoping I could show a few, but there's just way too many to name. And honestly, you just got to find what you might enjoy the best to get a good mark in. There's also the option to use exercise science 30 and phys 30 if you're applying into kin. And that's also good because it gives you kind of that base level of what to expect in your first year kinesiology courses as well. We do a lot of professional development in our field of work. It's built into our year and put on by our division. They'll offer sessions to us that we can attend in person. So we would go to downtown Saskatoon and sit in the Saskatoon Public Schools offices and learn from somebody there. Recently, we've shifted to online due to our pandemic situation. And there's also opportunities to complete things on your own time as well if you feel like there's something that you really want to learn. So some of the examples that I've done sessions on Microsoft OneNote. I completed my Google Educator Level 1 certification during the pandemic so I could better help teachers as they transitioned into online learning. I've gone to the SPIA conference, which is the Saskatchewan Physical Educators Association. They'll bring in people from all over Canada to show different games, different ways to teach. And it's just a really fun way to learn because it's lots of hands-on. And then PHE Canada Virtual Conference. So that's physical health and education. They put on sessions about Indigenous response to education and phys ed, assessment, and outside learning. There was a lot of really appropriate things to our times, and they were very good. And then I've also done consensus education, which is social justice in social sciences. So my journey. I only wanted to be a physiotherapist after high school. I was set on it. My dad, he was a teacher, still is a teacher. He retired, but then came back to teach. So he's been going for about 33 years now. I thought, oh yeah, I'll never be like my dad. I'm not going to be a phys ed teacher. And it was just a really irrational thought, I guess, but I just didn't see myself following in his shoes. So in 2014, I earned my Bachelor's of Science in Exercise Science with a minor in psychology through the College of Kinesiology. I didn't have the marks to get into physio, and I didn't have a backup plan. So there's a few months of going, uh-oh, what do I do? I ended up working for the city of Saskatoon as a rec worker, a personal trainer. I got my certified personal trainer certification through CSEP. And I also was an exercise therapist for the city of Saskatoon. I ended up burning myself out pretty badly. I would work 50 hours a week with no true days off. So even on a weekend, I would work 2 shifts on Saturday and a couple shifts on Sunday. It was sporadic hours, and I would work whenever I could, all the time. And my work-life balance was awful. I was just working, and I didn't really have much of a life. So I decided to look at, okay, what do I like out of these 3 jobs? So I really enjoyed working with people. I enjoyed showing the benefits of exercise and helping people get healthier, but I didn't like getting paid for it. It felt weird to me. So then I figured out that, hey, you know what? Teaching is the way to go. I went back to school, got my education degree with a specialty in high school phys ed and social studies. I ended up working out in Sun West School Division as a middle years classroom teacher and online high school teacher from 2016 to 2017. Then I came back to Saskatoon Public School and did a couple stints in elementary and middle years teaching. So again, very far away from high school phys ed, which I thought I really wanted to do, but I didn't once I figured out that the elementary kids were so much fun and I really enjoyed working there. And then I received my permanent contract as a phys ed teacher in 2019. So I think the biggest piece of advice I can offer from my journey is don't close the door. If you think there's something that you'll go, oh yeah, I'll never want to do that. Well, you might. I found that over and over again. I didn't want to be a teacher at first, but then I found out that was the perfect fit for me. And then I was like, oh, I want to be a high school phys ed teacher because I want to coach and I want to do all this. And it's like, well, I don't really want to coach at a high school level. I want to help kids improve their physical skills so that they can get to high school with a good set of physical activity or physical skills under their belt so they can enjoy their lives as active movers. So really it's just keep the door open and see what comes your way and be receptive to it. The opportunities in education, being a phys ed specialist, it's a tough job to get. There's 49 schools and not every school has 2 phys ed teachers like my school does. So there's roughly 70 positions within Saskatoon Public. And the specialist role isn't very common in the rural divisions because if you're a teacher, so like when I taught in Sun West, I taught a handful of subjects and one wasn't even phys ed. I did social studies, I did health, I did art. So you just have to be a bit of a jack of all trades when you're in the rural centers. If you complete a master's program, there's opportunities in administration. So you can be a vice principal, a principal, you can work as a consultant in downtown or at the Board of Education where you plan curriculum, you lead people through professional development. So you're assisting teachers or you're teaching teachers rather than teaching kids. And if you have a combined program degree, you'll have a wide variety of things to choose from. So I've got a snapshot here from the KinEd website. You can be a teacher, you can design curriculum, you can consult, like I said, you can get into coaching. So lots of the coaches you'd see in the CFL or university, they all have some sort of degree that they've worked through. You can work in cardiac rehab, you can be a high performance athlete specialist, you can do sport and rec. You really do have a lot of options. And the kinesiology college is so great because it feels smaller because there's not a whole lot of people in it. I think my graduating year had maybe 90 people and I knew all of them, I thought, quite well. And it's a really good community to be part of. So work-life balance. With built-in vacation times, it makes spending time with friends and family really easy. You get that downtime to take a breath and be able to come back and be a great teacher after your rest. We have personal days and we have sick days. So if you aren't feeling well and you need to stay home, you can get a sub in and you do get a paid sick day. So you get 15 a year, and then those actually do accumulate. So then if you end up getting really sick for a long time, you can use sick days to ensure that you're still receiving an income even though you can't be at work. As you gain experience, it becomes easier to leave work at work. So the first few years of my career, it was really hard to leave things at the office. I took everything home with me. I worked on it all the time, but now as I'm in my area of expertise, I don't have to work at home as much. I still do because I enjoy what I do and I like to plan and program and think and tinker with things, but I don't feel the need to constantly work all the time. And yes, there'll be some early mornings and late nights. So if you're doing extracurriculars, if you're doing some kind of club, or if you're staying late for parent-teacher interviews, you are required to stay until, I think we do 8 p.m. twice a year, which is nothing comparatively. So I know that when I get home, I'm not getting called in for a shift the next day. If it's a weekend, I know exactly what I'm doing. And like I said before, Monday to Friday work week, that opens up your weekends and you feel rested and ready sometimes. Any questions? That does it for me.
Very good, Greg. Any questions from anyone?
I was just going to make a comment, Greg. That was awesome. Very well laid out. I really don't have a whole lot of questions because I think you've handled just about every topic. The only thing that didn't record was that salary grid.
Oh yeah.
So just to maybe tell a student, you started with a 2-degree wage, but if a student came through university with just a single degree, 4 years, what would that starting wage be? I know they can look it up on the STF site, but just for the discussion, what would be that starting first year, 4-year degree teacher?
I'm just pulling it up right now here. I believe it was $56,029 for a class 4. So that would be your standard 4-year education degree.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Greg, you mentioned you took a kinese degree and then got an education degree. So you have 2 degrees. Can you explain the combined degree program? Is it, maybe for students that haven't looked at that, does it give you 2 degrees too, or does it give you just combined?
It does give you 2 degrees. So it ends up being a 5-year program. I did it totally backwards because, again, I didn't want to be a teacher. I got my 4 years back and I had to do a 1.5 years of schooling plus 1 or 2 classes in a semester of Indigenous studies. But if you take the combined program, they weave it all together in 5 years and then you get 2 degrees out of it.
Yeah, so that's a good way to approach it. However,
it's a smoother path.
Are you in education in that combined program first, or are you like in the bigger college, or are you?
You would be more kin based first. So I had a few friends go through kin ed and they were primarily kin, and then you kind of see them disappear around their 4th year when they start taking more ed classes and do their internship.
Yeah, because I thought it was a great thing that you mentioned too about kin being a smaller college. You get to know people quicker, and I think sometimes at university that's sometimes one of the problems with a lot of rural students, especially, is that getting to know new people in a smaller college, that's a little more possible.
Oh, absolutely. Like arts and science, you go in there, if you're doing a general degree, you see a 250 person auditorium coming from Rosetown, where it's a school. We only had 400 kids in my class or my school. I saw 350 people in a classroom. It was just totally mind blowing. So it was nice to have that 2nd, 3rd, and 4th year in where, yes, there was 100 kids, but it was smaller and you saw them all the time. And it just made for a really good community, I thought.
Another question, Greg, you were always involved in sports. I know football, baseball, other sports as well. You played them at a pretty high level too. Mm-hmm. So do you ever, have a yearning to kind of coach or something like that? And and I'm not saying you're probably not doing it right now. I was assuming, is that correct?
Actually, we're running volleyball right now. It's different, but it's really good. So I guess a little bit of my background in athletics. I played AAA baseball in Swift Current, and I was a pitcher. And I also got to play a year of football with the Saskatoon Hilltops in 2010. It was actually the first year that championship run, and that was super cool to be part of. So being a phys ed teacher is kind of my way of giving back what sport gave to me, because if I can give people the skills so they can go and play those sports. I mean, I'm not looking to build athletes. I'm looking to build people who enjoy walking, go to yoga. Recently, I started cross-country skiing, something that I thought, yeah, right, I'll never do that. But when a pandemic hits and you get outside and see your friends safely, you're going to do that. So I like the idea that what sport has given me, I'm trying to give back through this. And I do like the idea of coaching still. So hopefully I'll do some basketball in the winter here. But right now, We just played our first game of volleyball, and I was so proud of the girls. They were so excited when they got their first win. It's so rewarding.
Well, and I think you've done a good job of you're keeping the two separate. The two, teaching phys ed is not coaching, and I mean, I think I know when your dad and I first went into phys ed as teachers, the kind of an expectation to be coaches as well. We spent a lot of our career coaching and teaching, but it is
absolutely.
It is good to be able to separate the two and realize that you can teach at a primary phys ed position and still coach, but it's not like in the old days, I guess, of teaching where maybe that because it was an expectation.
Yeah, and even still that exists in the city. When you were in high school phys ed, I knew a guy who was teaching science at the high school I interned at. He was the phys ed teacher, but got shifted out because he started spending more time with his family and coaching less. So there still lies that expectation. And that was one of the things that kind of drove me out of high school, was that I want to be a coach, but I also want to be a teacher. I'm not one before the other, because when I coach and when I teach, they are mutually exclusive. I am a different person when I'm coaching football than when I am showing a 4-year-old how to throw a ball. So you got to make sure that your mindsets are a little bit separate. And you also know that kids who are in phys ed don't always want to be in phys ed. So we try and make it as enjoyable and fun for them as possible. But if you're a coach and you're playing a sport, you know that they want to be there and you're trying to drive them to be the best they can be. So it's two very different mentalities in my eyes, same kind of concepts, but definitely different in how you approach it.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. Yeah. Any other questions, Renette or Gord?
I just want to thank you as a new teacher coming up. You really provide a great perspective and a very fresh perspective for kids that are thinking about going this road. I know it was a good road for all of us retired teachers. We look back and we feel pretty good about the difference that we've made, and the same will happen for you. So I want to thank you very much for taking the time for the presentation today. You did an awesome job.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thanks a lot, Greg. So we'll stop the recording.